Now, for more insight on China's reform and on the challenges to its financial sector, joining me now from Beijing is Wang Huiyao, president of Center for China Globalization. Sir, we've just heard from the minister on the new central bank governor of China, Yi Gang, at China Development Forum. He said China should focus on fixing its domestic issues before countering external shocks. So what do you make of his remarks?
Well, I think he was basically yesterday I was there, and he was talking about China will continue to reform, and he actually emphasized that the financial sector is also going to emphasize more reforms, and he actually outlined a few areas that China is going to relax its control, and I think that also particularly with the foreign companies coming do business in China, financial companies coming to China. So I think he and Premier Han Zhen gave some very open remarks, and also including the Vice Minister Wang Huiyao. He was also talk in the afternoon yesterday and talk about opening more areas for foreign investors, for more foreign companies, and also to reduce the tariff, and particularly echoed what Premier Li Keqiang has actually said at the conclusion of NPC and CPPCC section. So I think this is, there's a host of Chinese top officials all come out and send signals and saying the openness, and also continue to deepening open in China. So I think that's a good sign that China is taking all the problems seriously, and the leadership is really taking actions to do something to modify the situation, I think.
Let's talk about the looming U.S. China trade war. $3 billion worth of goods. That is the amount China would impose on U.S. goods exported to the Chinese market. Do you think this is just a beginning, and do we expect more to come?
Well, I think, of course, China have to respond. I mean, that's always a two-way street. But I don't think the trade war is good for any side. And as we know that we are so intertwined, deeply with each other. And as we all know, also, I mean, this is a value chain, global value chain, society now, and we are a village, and it's different than 40 years ago. One country can basically self-sustain. Now you have to rely on each other. So any retaliation, any trade tariff will basically hurt not only the opposite countries, but also itself. So I don't think that China wants to escalate that. But I think that what the U.S. doing is really no good for U.S. company as well. Let alone is going to hurt U.S. economy, U.S. companies, and U.S. consumers, given. For example, in the last 20 years, the U.S. inflation is kept only 2%, and before that 20 years, U.S. inflation is around 5%. So you can see actually the trade with China was actually reduced inflation in the U.S., but also trade with China has actually stimulated employment, in the U.S. as well. So I think you got to look at the whole picture, plus the service sector as well. China has always, has a big deficit on the service trade with U.S. So I think you got to look at the whole picture rather than just unilaterally doing this trade retaliation. And moreover, actually, the calculation of that is a bit out of date as well. And what composed of deficit? For example, I mean, Apple has announced that they're going to repatriate $350 billion US dollars back to the United States, and we know that China is the largest foreign market for Apple. So. Well, that's 350 billion composed some of, the trade deficit as well. So I think, we got to look at the whole picture rather than just
the intermediate goods that's counted towards China, but the value do not really belong to China. Wang Huiyao, president of Center for China Globalization. Thank you so much for your insight.